Hey there, everyone in the digital world. Welcome back once again to another episode of Spliced in Later. It's 2024, it's March, we're almost near the end, and we have movies to review. Now, without beating around the bush, today we're going to talk about Kung Fu Panda 4, the fourth installment in the Kung Fu Panda animated franchise from DreamWorks, starring Jack Black, voicing everyone's favorite, lovable, goofy panda, Po. Now, in getting this review out to you, in terms of who my listeners are, I'm not sure on accessibility. Kung Fu Panda 4 came out a few weeks ago. Came out in one of the early weeks in March, a little bit after Dune Part 2. That also came out in March. What a good movie that was. But here in Australia, we still don't actually have it yet. I went to advanced screenings that were on last weekend. Officially here in Australia, they're not releasing it until pretty much the day before Good Friday. So over the Easter long weekend, if you're looking for a movie to go see with your family, this will be available to you. In a way, I get it. I understand why there are delays for animated films or shuffling of the boards depending on the seasons for different countries. Odds are the target audience need to be able to see this as much as possible. And if you release it at a time where they're in school for most of it, don't have that extra bit of oomph time to see it, sure, you're going to postpone it to the Easter holidays or the school holidays or the summer break or the winter break or whatever. It's a little frustrating for people like me, just basically because of people's inability to be chill if they've seen something and just start talking about it. Unfortunately, I end up seeing online a lot of news about movies and TVs, which is quite interesting. I'm always intrigued to hear about production stuff and everything. But if something comes out in a place that has access to something I don't, and there's no real sense of, I've seen something and I'm not going to think about whether anyone else has seen it, I'm just going to immediately talk about things that happened in it and spoil it for everybody. I know there are people who like to be spoiled on things. I am not one of them. I would like to see a movie and discover things as it is intended. Now, people in general forgetting it, that's fine. Those big websites like Screen Rant sucks. I hate Screen Rant. Screen Rant is something that I guess less and less do I require it for news, so I feel like I'm gonna get rid of it. But it has the most no chill of anything when it comes to talking about something that has just premiered. Say House of the Dragon comes out, Game of Thrones, Walking Dead, whatever. Within seconds of that episode finishing, they'll release like 9 or 10 separate articles all about this one episode. And in the past, they used to be vague about it, but now they have clickbait titles like why this person did that in this episode, or what this big death means. And there's literally a picture of the person that died. And it's the same for movies. It's like what that scene means in the mid-credit scene, why this person did that, why this person didn't appear in the movie. So when Kung Fu Panda 4 was coming, I'm like, oh my god, here we go. I'm going to get spoiled on all this stuff 2 weeks before I get to see it. And for the most part, I wasn't, which can be worrying because it means, is there not enough talk or traction about this movie to warrant it being spoiled in the first place? But also, I guess, Kung Fu Panda 4. It is the fourth installment for a franchise. That last film was in 2017. And in terms of DreamWorks' biggest hits, I don't think it's like huge in the way that Shrek or How to Train Your Dragon. It's definitely up there for sure. But I don't think it's got as much going on buzz around it wise than all of that other stuff. Now, I love the Kung Fu Panda franchise, conversely as several of that. I think it's one of my favorites, if not my favorite DreamWorks franchise. And that's saying a lot because Shrek exists. I really like Madagascar and How to Train Your Dragon, of course, great stuff. But Kung Fu Panda, when I saw that first movie in 2008, it really appealed to me. Just the animation style, the use of the Chinese motif and the Kung Fu master training, Karate Kid style underdog thing, and then just the goofiness of Po and Jack Black just embodying that character. He's very nice and lovely and completely relatable and in over his head, but gosh darn it, does he never give up. all three movies I think are great, and I think if you talk to anybody, if anyone picks one of the three Kung Fu Panda movies and says that's my favorite, that's completely justified. There's no definitive answer. My personal favorite, Kung Fu Panda 2, but I love all three. And I also think it's a perfect trilogy. Kung Fu Panda sets up Po's story, coming of age story, going the distance to become the Dragon Warrior. Kung Fu Panda 2 unpacks all that unknown backstory about where he came from and tapping into that inner potential and truly becoming, fighting back against the demons that have plagued your life, and blah, 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 blah. And then the third one sort of wraps it all up by reuniting Po with his family, going up against like the ultimate bad guy and truly becoming the Dragon Warrior. And by the end of that, everybody's happy, everyone's united, singing and dancing, blah, 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 blah. That's really it. That is the satisfactory logistical end of Po's story. So Kung Fu Panda 3, that came out in 2017. Counting wise, that's 7 years ago, I think. Yep, 7 years. A solid trilogy, a well-contained story. But here we are in 2024, and apparently it's time for a fourth one. I'm always apprehensive about stuff like this, especially for something that has, logistically, in my opinion, reached its end. There's a lot of things that happen with fourth installments. Trilogies are designed to tell like a big overall arc mostly, in most cases. Sometimes trilogies just seem to be the thing to aim for in most cases. But you have your Lord of the Rings trilogy, or even recently Planet of the Apes, Rise, Dawn, War is a perfect story of Caesar and everything going on there. The original Star Wars trilogy. Trilogy is just pretty good. If you can get a satisfactory character arc across 3 films and not stuff up in any capacity, you've done good. But very rarely, but becoming more frequently, there's always like okay, well, what if we did a fourth one? Which is fine. If you feel like you've got story to tell, do it. But there's always that concern that, are you making a fourth story because you've got a story to tell or because you want to make some money? It can go both ways. I thought Toy Story 4 was completely unnecessary and unwarranted, and we didn't need it because Toy Story 3 was the perfect ending to Woody and Friends. But then I saw Toy Story 4 and didn't realize how much that movie complemented the others and provided, in a way, a perfect little epilogue to all that. I hope Toy Story 5 can do that, because apparently that's coming now too. But then you got something like Shrek Forever After, which, in retrospect, is a better third installment than Shrek the Third, I think. Anyway, it can go either way. But I always worry when we put something to bed and we come back and it's like, we're doing some more. Is it warranted? But Kung Fu Panda, DreamWorks have been knocking it out of the park recently with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, The Bad Guys, and in general, you never know what's going to happen. But suffice it to say, based on probably what you can tell while I'm talking about this, I'm not that impressed with Kung Fu Panda 4. I don't think it's a bad movie in any regard. I think it's well made, fun to watch, a good time. But it does not justify its excuse for being made. There's no reason for it. I don't think it adds anything to the Kung Fu Panda story. And it is definitely of an inferior quality than what came before. It doesn't do anything different or enhance Po's story in any way that needed to. And it falls into a lot of tropes and predictability that you get from a lot of movies that you've seen 1,000 times before, and makes some baffling choices in regards to Po's history as well and characters he has got into, which we'll touch on briefly. And as a result, looking at Kung Fu Panda 4, it's sort of like just an extra thing that is now attached to a pretty perfect trilogy. And if you were to marathon them all in one go, if you finished on the third one, you'd be like, perfect. If you finished on the fourth one, you're like, okay, cool, thanks. So Kung Fu Panda 4, we pick up with Po again. He is the Dragon Warrior, all is well. He's saving the day, yada, yada, yada. But now we're at a point where Master Shifu says, you can't be the Dragon Warrior anymore. You have to be a spiritual leader. So you have to pick a new Dragon Warrior. Why he has to do that isn't really pushed all that hard. It's just, I guess, something he has to do. But anyway, he's struggling doing that because he doesn't want to let go of being the Dragon Warrior. Not really in a selfish way. He just doesn't really know who to pick, I guess. But then coming into his life is a mysterious fox called Zhen who tries to steal some stuff from the Jade Palace. And then during the course of that, he learns about this mysterious mafia crime boss thing called the Chameleon, voiced by Viola Davis, who's causing trouble. So on one last Dragon Warrior mission, he makes a deal with Zhen to take him to the Chameleon so he can take it down. Also because the Chameleon is shape-shifting into villains from Poe's past, specifically Tai Lung from the first one. And she has an ultimate plan that she needs to steal Kung Fu. How she does that will require you to watch the movie, I guess, because if I say how, that spoils what they assume is going to be a big twist, but what you've already seen in the trailer, so it doesn't really matter. So it's a road trip movie where he's going along and he sort of teaches Zhen how to be a better person because she's lived on the street, she's a thief, she looks out for number one, all that usual stuff, and she can't understand Poe's generosity and friendliness and everything that makes Poe great, which will eventually coincide with them teaming up with bandits and all these other people to take down the Chameleon, and Poe saves the day. Basically it, really. There's a side quest as well in that Poe's two dads, his adopted dad, voiced by James Hong, the chicken goose thing, and his actual panda dad, voiced by Bryan Cranston, follow along behind him because they're worried about him, and they get up into their own shenanigans. There's no Furious 5 in here, no Angelina Jolie and friends, so don't really expect them to show up. It's in a way good that they do that, I suppose. I did just say with my review of Frozen Empire that had too many characters and the movie needed to know when to cut people out. And yeah, let's be fair. If you don't have anything to do for the Furious 5, it's just better that they're not there rather than just hanging around and being forced to say and do things. I don't think they would have added to the story, especially what they were going for with Poe. It's a very Poe and Zhen personal story, so that's pretty fine. Jack Black is on perfect form as Poe. He's great, as always. He brings so much enthusiasm and energy to the role and the character that he's always fun to watch. Even if you don't really buy whatever emotional arc or journey he's going on, he still makes you laugh. He still makes you just feel good in general, just seeing him get up to misadventures. He's the only real standout, though. Everybody else feels relatively like they're just here to do a job. Viola Davis as the Chameleon, I think, is good, but she's completely underutilized. I realized as we were getting towards the end of the movie that we hadn't actually seen her that much. And compared to the other villains from Poe's other movies, with like Tai Lung or Lord Shen or Kai or all of them, she has no real connection or any sort of motivation to be an enemy of Poe, or Poe vice versa, a need to bring her down other than just she is a bad person doing bad. And I think what has made the original Kung Fu Panda movies work so well is that emotional connection between the hero and villain, what they're doing, how it affects each other, the personal motivations and stakes. Here it's just the Chameleon is just a generic bad guy that will bring trouble to the world if Poe doesn't stop it, which is entertaining in seeing Viola Davis having fun in the role, but I feel nothing to it. And again, she's not in it enough to really justify any sort of... If you were ever to do a ranking of the best villains or the villains worst to best from Kung Fu Panda, she's easily on the bottom by a clear margin because there's just nothing there for it. Even some twists and turns that they throw in towards her origins and her connection to other characters doesn't hit like they want you to think it hits, because you just don't see her that much. You just have no investment there. But the side quest of the two dads, James Hong and Bryan Cranston, that's nice. I liked that. It gets old and tired after they do the same joke like 3 or 4 times. But I didn't realize I wanted that double act of Bryan Cranston and James Hong just going on a little journey together. And you got a panda who's a coward and a goose who's a bit too abrasive for his own good. And basically everywhere they go, they have to deal with the aftermath of what Poe and Zhen have done before. So like Poe accidentally gets caught up in a barroom brawl. So later on, when they show up, the way the patrons of the bar react to them is very in conjunction to how they just had to deal with Po. And now there's another panda here, and what they want and how they deal with the situation is vastly different. So that's pretty nice. I like them. James Hong is a class act. I love him. He's a great actor. I'll be devastated when he eventually passes, but he's done so many things and he's been so good in all of them. He's great. Otherwise, everybody else, yeah. Dustin Hoffman, completely unutilized. They completely butcher Shifu's whole character. Every movie, I think, has been a little bit of a disservice to Shifu. He was such a big part of the first movie and that emotional journey that he goes on with Po, as well as his own teachings and understandings of who he is as a master. With each one, they've just reduced him to grumpy, curmudgeonly, wise mentor who is not involved and doesn't really get or understand what's going on and just flies off the handle. And this is the absolute lowest of the low for Shifu. From forcing Po to not be the Dragon Warrior anymore to... The worst part is when Po's like, I need help to take down the chameleon. This thief Zhen, I see something in her, so I'm going to use her to. I'm going to get her to help me. And Shifu's like, but she's just a thief. She's nothing. Don't follow her. Completely contradicts everything he learnt from Kung Fu Panda about the perceptions of people when he begged Oogway to banish Po from the Jade Palace and was like, Po's not a kung fu master, he's not the Dragon Warrior, look at him, he's a panda. And then Shifu of course learns, oh wait, I was wrong, there's more to people than meets the eye. But now he's just grumpy Dustin Hoffman, but he's barely in the movie, so it doesn't matter. And Awkwafina voicing Zhen, it's the traditional street kid, abrasive, snarky, sees the world in a very negative light sort of character that eventually over time grows and becomes a better person. The whole mystery of I wonder who Po will pick to be the new Dragon Warrior by the end of the movie. I think it's pretty obvious what's going to happen in that regard. They do try to do a twist with her, which worked for about 10 seconds for me. They twisted it and I'm like, oh cool, now stick with that. But they immediately reversed it. The character change didn't really make sense or really impact in any way because it just went right back to how things were. Can't go too much more into it without spoiling it, but the movie would have been a million times better if that twist, they'd actually stuck with it, and then they'd gone in a completely different direction with other characters. And I'll throw a little bit of love to my boy Ke Huy Quan. Obviously, he's great. I worry that Hollywood is just putting him in things now because they're like, look, it's Ke Huy Quan. You love him. You'll come see it because you like him. He doesn't really have that much to do in this movie either, but he seemed the most natural of the voice actors in here. And he had some funny lines as this thieving, violent armadillo creature. And the animation, I will say, looks great. All animation at the moment for DreamWorks is an improvement on what they've come before, and the way they're embracing, I think, all the different styles and color, I think is awesome. Kung Fu Panda has always had a unique vibe to it in terms of like old Kung Fu style movies, and they really build on that more here, combined with the score as well. I don't know if they add anything new to the score, but the score for Kung Fu Panda in general has always been great. It's always been this really emotional, powerful crescendo music, which just works. And weirdly enough, there's some covers in here that are absolute bangers. During a chase sequence, the background music you realize is like a strings version of Crazy Train, which is pretty cool. And there's a full-on Tenacious D cover of Hit Me Baby One More Time, which is far better than it has any right to be. Overall, though, the movie is very forgettable, I think. In terms of how high the bar has been set for Kung Fu Panda movies, this doesn't really get anywhere near those bars, and it doesn't really prove to me in a way that Toy Story 4 did that this needed to be made to be a part of the Kung Fu franchise, or that it warranted being made. It's just some extra stuff that happens to Po that doesn't really change him as a character. It doesn't really have that much needed development to finish off that arc of his story. And worryingly, it sort of finishes in a way where I'm like, okay, they're just going to make more Kung Fu Panda movies. Will they be Kung Fu Panda movies? What are they going to do? Are they going to make more spin-offs? I really don't know. But with how we're operating in Hollywood and IPs at the moment, it makes me apprehensive for sure. And one thing as well, I have to talk on certain decisions that have been made with villains from Poe's past. Not really in a huge way, and I can't say too much because of spoilers, but obviously Tai Lung is back in this movie in some capacity. And I believe people already know, but there are silent cameos from Lord Shen from Kung Fu Panda 2 and Kai from Kung Fu Panda 3. But what they do with them, and in terms of how they interact with Poe, especially Lord Shen, and especially what Shen did to Poe's family and his mother, it's completely at odds, and it strings hollow to be like these villains are sort of respecting him. I don't know. You'll have to go to the movie and see for yourself, but I hated it. I felt like it just went, did these people even see the other Kung Fu Pandas? Or is it just, what characters can we bring back to show in trailers and promotional images so people can go, I remember that character, therefore I am happy. I don't know. It just makes me bitter. Honestly, as I was going to review this, I thought I'd be more positive. I think it really needs to be said that it is a competent movie. It's fun. If you're looking for something for your kids to see, they will have a good time with it. There were a lot of kids in my screening, and they were, having fun. It's fun to see silly panda do silly things. And if you like the Kung Fu Panda franchise, you may get a kick out of seeing these characters again. But I think in actuality, you'll just be felt a little let down, unenthusiastic, and a bit disappointed, I think. In terms of this and Frozen Empire, someone asked me which one I think is better. And honestly, I think Frozen Empire is better just in terms of the steps it took in the right direction. So I guess it really depends on how you feel going into the movie. I didn't expect much from Ghostbusters, so I got more out of it. I wanted to expect much from Kung Fu Panda, and I got less out of it. But look, honestly, it's a 6 out of 10 from me. It's fine. It's serviceable. There's some good stuff in here. A few laughs, good animation, good music. Fun to see Jack Black back. But it really does not in any capacity justify its existence and its need to be added on to an already perfect trilogy. And there's definitely more letdowns than let-ups, if that is such a thing. Well, thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed. I will be back again quite soon to review Godzilla and Kong, The New Empire. I hope this one's good. I don't know. I remember I didn't actually like Godzilla versus Kong that much, which I forgot that until I looked back on my old review and I'm like, oh, okay. But, at least with something like Godzilla and Kong, my expectations are very low for me to enjoy something like that, because as long as the monsters punch each other, I think I have a good time. But so far, nothing is really giving me any sort of belief so far that Dune Part 2 is going to be knocked off my number one spot for quite some time. But we'll see. That said, Easter's coming. These movies are out, and I don't think it would be a waste of money if you saw either. I think it's a good time. It's something to see at the cinemas that I don't think you will regret in the long run. That's an endorsement. So until later in the week, or until next time you choose to listen to whatever I'm doing, thank you very much for listening. I love you. Appreciate you as always. You've been spliced in later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.